when it comes to these two streams of yoga, or lineages of yoga, that is Vedic and Tantric, I still have to say that for me, I'm discerning the difference between the two. And I think that in the yoga world, most people don't really realize that they are teaching a combination of both. And a lot of it has filtered into new age ways of talking that also kind of flavors the yoga world. People just kind of take from here, there, and everywhere. And so, even in a yoga teacher training with the best of intentions, there will be this kind of mush of the two, which, hey, I'm not here to say is a bad thing. I am still personally trying to untangle all of the things that I've learned and figure out which ones are Vedic, which ones are Tantric, which ones are just kind of new age, and also which aspects of these teachings do I personally align with. So I'm still very much on the path of discovery and untangling myself. And I suppose that my training personally began with a physical practice, and the physical, okay, no, that's not true. Before that, I was meditating. So I started with a meditation practice at 16. And then at 19, I started a physical practice. And the physical practice I did for 12 years pretty consistently. And it was quite masculine in nature, in that it was a set sequence and you were meant to do it every day. And it didn't matter where you were on your cycle or how you were feeling in your body, you just kind of show up. And that taught me a lot about consistency, which we were describing before, about what a daily spiritual practice is. But I think that it had a lot of benefits, but also for me, it lost the idea that my body could be informing me in my spiritual practice, and that my body is part of my spiritual experience. And I went on to live in India. And in my time in India, I was continuing with this path of yoga, this kind of quite masculine path. And then I happened to come across one of my teachers in India, and she just did things so differently. Like, she was just, everybody loved her. Everybody loved her classes, and people would talk about her classes and just say they were unlike anything. And I started to practice with her, and this woman was able to draw in so much of what she knew. And it wasn't in a way that felt like this kind of uh, bits and pieces bricolage of anything that she'd picked up. She was well trained in Ayurveda and massage therapy and Kundalini Kriya and vinyasa flows and pranayama. And she knew all of this stuff that I had never been taught in a yoga class before. I mean, when I first started practicing yoga, this was 20 years ago, and it just wasn't what it is today. And when I started to learn from her, it was, I learned so much through osmosis with her. She would weave things into classes with such skill. And eventually it came to the point where she needed some support as a teacher, and I offered my support. And I knew the asanas just like the back of my hand by then. You know, like, teaching a yoga class for me was no issue, even though I hadn't properly been trained. But she said to me, if you want to do this, then you have to show up to my classes, every single one. You've got to show up. And so she really called upon a sense of discipline in the student. And I had to really be devoted to her as a teacher, because even when I felt tired, or at that time I was drinking, you know, I was living in India, living the party life. And you know, I'd have a glass of wine or two at some fancy opening that I was at, and I'd still have to show up for my yoga practice and pay the price the next day. And it built up a beautiful relationship that she never, I guess she never wanted to be called a guru ever. She hated that term, and she was like, I am your soul sister. We are here together. And it was really anti-hierarchical, which is quite unusual, especially in India. So it kind of opened up a connection between us that it was still, I was learning from her. I was very much the student. She was very much the teacher. And I was fortunate enough to be in that situation for a couple of years. And for me, I learned so much in that, in just being in her presence. And what she taught me was to expand my teachings beyond the physical and to understand more of the energy body, the history, the philosophy. She was very hands on with her students in terms of adjusting. She was very present with people. She was fun. She would shout at people. She was just like so authentic. She'd be like, "You, what are you doing? What you know?" And she'd be like, "You shouldn't be doing this. We have yoga teachers in the room." She'd be like, "No, no, not for you." She was just great. It was, and like other Indian teachers, they just like pull you into this insane adjustment. There wasn't like consent and agency. She'd just grab my leg and it'd be like up to my head. And she was intense, but authentic and fiery. And she was just real. And it extended out into her life. And I knew her in her personal life. So she was a great example for me. And I'd had other teachers that I'd adored before her as well, but she gave me something new. And after that, I did my certification. I've been teaching in India for a couple of years, uncertified. But I kind of knew what I was doing in terms of asana. I wasn't teaching anything I didn't know. And then I got certified and realized how much I didn't know. And this is when everything opened up for me, like getting certified in that first teacher training. And I was taught by a group of teachers who were tantrikas. They didn't advertise it, and like tantric teachers actually don't advertise. They don't put themselves out there. And if you go to India, they're not telling people about it because it's very underground, like the real lineage.
Why is that, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, I think it's part of a tradition, I suppose, of secrecy that started, well, I mean, that's part of the yogic tradition anyway, that these teachings are not meant for everyone. That's kind of why they are written in code and why you need a teacher. That there needs to be a certain level of readiness in the student before they're able to come to this, but also because I suppose during the period of time when tantric teachings were flourishing, around about 1,000 years ago or so, the Muslim invaders came into India, and Tantra is really a worship of the divine feminine in all of its aspects. And so the Muslim invaders came in and saw it as heresy. And so all of the goddess temples were destroyed. All of the texts, the tradition basically had to go underground and went into total secrecy. And I think it really has a kind of, has a lot of its roots, that kind of secret aspect has a lot of its roots in the fact that, yeah, a lot of it had to go completely underground. It wasn't safe for people to practice. They couldn't practice it out in the open. And what we know of Tantra today has only been salvaged by families, like very brave families, a lot of them in the Kashmir region in northern India, who were tantric families who held the texts over generations and kept them safe and hidden. And when they became destroyed, they would rewrite all of the texts, not very often even knowing what they were referring to. And so, like, not only did we lose most of the classical tantric tradition, but of that tradition, of the texts that are available to us, so few have been correctly translated. So, and then the other aspect of it is that a lot of it is really misunderstood, because within Tantra, there's the right hand path, which is publicly practiced techniques, and then there's the left hand path, which are privately practiced techniques, which are ritualistic in nature, and some of them do include certain sexual practices. And those are the things that everyone in the West has kind of focused their attention on. And there's a certain private aspect, and the teachers who are teaching those kinds of things, they're not advertising. I mean, both really. in India in any case. But, you know, things are changing, times are changing, information is out there. And I suppose it's more about trying to find that which is legitimate. It's
Yeah.
hard to know.